So, okay, so that's basically the terrestrial side of the enclosure. You have the branches, the plants, everything's planted, and now you've constructed this 260 whatever it was gallon, basically aquarium that comes off it, sort of like an L shape. So, if anyone's listening, just picturing like you have this 4 meter by 4 meter by essentially 2 meter deep enclosure that's kind of at the back of a room, and then you have on the left hand side, we'll say, jutting out of an aquarium attached to the
Yeah.
so tell me about that, because that as you had mentioned earlier, that the idea was to pull the water feature out of the enclosure so it's not taking up floor space. But I'm curious, how does the snake move in between those? How is that thing functioning?
Okay, so
Welcome back to another episode of the Animals at Home podcast. My name is Dylan Perrin, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Today, I'm speaking with Anke Mertens, who is a snake keeper out of Belgium. She's also been featured in an episode previously, just a couple back, when we had Dr. Zach Loafman on discussing his new book, The Natural History and Captive Care of False Water Cobras and Other Xenodontine Snakes. That's not a mouthful. We had Anke, we talked about her because her enclosure for her false water cobra is actually featured in Zach's book, and it is this mind-blowing, incredible enclosure, and a ton of people were actually asking about that enclosure and wanting more information on it after I posted Dr. Loafman's episode, so I thought, why not just do the real thing and have Anke on to discuss it. So in this episode, we talk about why she got into keeping false water cobra, or what attracted her to that species, and sort of the evolution of her care from the beginning, the first enclosures that she had for it, and this incredible large, sort of 4 meter wide, 2 meter deep enclosure that's sort of ceiling high. It's with a giant 260 gallon aquarium. It's a beautiful and incredible enclosure. And as we mentioned in this episode, this type of enclosure is not reasonable for everybody. It's not reasonable for me. It's probably not reasonable for you, but there's so much great DIY type information that you can learn from this episode. I mean, when you talk to somebody who spent essentially, $10,000 or more on an enclosure that they built by hand, there's so much you can extract from that as far as knowledge and experience. So I had a blast chatting with Anke. It's just an incredible episode. Her enclosure is amazing. I know you will enjoy it. Let's jump into it. Well, Anke, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
thank you for having me.
I recorded the episode a couple, maybe months ago now, with Dr. Loafman about the false water cobras in his new book that came out. Of course, your enclosure is featured in that book, and we featured it in the episode as well. And just that section of that episode, people were just commenting on YouTube and on Instagram, and people really wanted to know more about your setup. And you and I were kind of chatting through DMs, and I thought, you know what, it just makes so much sense to have you on, and we can really break down this incredible enclosure that you've built for an amazing species of snake that really deserve a lot. So I do want to get into that, of course. But and the fact that that was your first snake is even a more of an interesting wrinkle into it, and we'll kind of talk about why that happened as well. But I'm curious, have you always kept reptiles, or because I know you sort of came into snakes a little bit more recently, but were you keeping reptiles before that?
Not at all.
Okay.
Actually, I've wanted a snake since I was 6 years old. My mom is terrified of snakes, reptiles in general. She was like, "You will not get a reptile in my house. You can get one once you live alone, but it's not coming into my house." So we would go to Disney World when I was a kid in Paris, because yeah, I'm from Europe, so for me it's Paris. And at the end of the trip, we could buy one thing from like the little shop at the end. My brother would come out with like Disney plush of like Mickey Mouse, and I would come out with a massive rubber snake that was as realistic as I could get it. And then I would walk around with it for months on end around my neck because I really wanted a snake, but couldn't get one. So for years and years, it was just looking online, doing research, looking into which snake I kind of wanted to get as a first snake myself. And there the idea always came for a king snake. Always loved Mexican black king snakes just for the fact that they're jet black. Um, and then things happened. I got to live alone, bought a house. Before I even moved in here, I had the first enclosure ready. So yeah, my snake had an enclosure before I even lived here. And then before I moved, the state came up with a new law, a list of snakes that would become legal to keep, or in general, reptiles. It's not limited to just snakes. And the list is extremely limited. I
So this is
think,
basically like a positive or a white list telling you
yeah,
the species you're allowed to have, not the species you aren't allowed to have.
exactly. It's in Dutch, it's called a positive list if you were to literally translate it. And I think there is about 100-ish, I think 106 or so snakes on there. which is really not that much if you look at the amount of species there are. One of them on there, or not on there, is the false water cobra. Um, the only way you were allowed to keep any of the snakes that were not on the list is if you had them prior to the slough becoming active, which was about 3 months after I moved into my house. So that's how I got to the point where, okay, I really always knew I wanted a false water cobra, just not as a first snake originally. But then that law came to be, and the choice had to be made. Do I go for it? And does she become forcibly my first snake ever? Or do I not get her and never get one?
Mm-hmm.
And well, that choice was very quickly made, I'll be honest.
So was your plan, if the law wasn't going to come into place, like let's say that didn't exist, your plan was to start with a Mexican black king. Is that the enclosure that you already had set up ready to go for
Oh,
a Mexican
no.
black king? Oh, okay.
No, no, no. As soon as I knew the list was coming, I knew also that she was going to be my first snake. And
Okay,
I
gotcha.
got a nearly 7 foot by 2 foot by 3 foot enclosure for her as a baby.
Wow.
So a lot of people tend to go towards those sizes for an adult. That was her baby enclosure. And after about a year and a half, I already thought personally that that was way too small for her with the amount that she was exploring and moving around. It had a pond in there about 100 liters, 100 liters, which would be 26 and a half gallons.
Mm.
But at about a year old, it was already too small for her to really swim. She could soak, of course, but not swim. And it was one of the most enjoyable things to watch when she was young. And at that point, I was like, okay, this enclosure can be used in the future for another animal that doesn't get as big and as active. She really needs something bigger. And so the plans for the big enclosure started.
Do you remember what initially drew you to a false water cobra? I mean, I'm sure you were doing lots of research. You were thinking, what's my first snake going to be? You must have stumbled across them. Was there something that jumped out? Like, A, was there a moment you remember actually finding them? And B, what about that species was something that you thought, I need to keep this?
In general, any video I watched of people keeping this species, they would always come back to their intelligence, how inquisitive they are, how curious they are. They like to explore. They're really active snakes. For example, personally, I don't keep anything like a ball python because I know they're night active. You won't see them that actively during the day. I work during the day. I'm home at the evening, sure, but when their lights go off, I'm going to bed too,
Mm-hmm.
usually around the same time. So I wouldn't never really see a snake that's active at night because I'm in bed. And of course, I enjoy seeing my animals from time to time. So yeah, a snake that's extremely active. Semi-aquatic, I like stuff like aquariums. So the idea of being able to combine both was already quite intriguing. I have a huge fascination for plants. My house has, I think, about 300 plants in it.
Wow.
So yeah, being able to combine big enclosures with big species of plants is also quite fun because of course they will thrive way better in an enclosure with lighting and watering and live insects and everything than just in a pot in in like your living room.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, with the falsies, just the way they act, how active they are, you really can see that they recognize people, which is one of the things I mostly learned owning one. But once she knew me and my boyfriend, she wouldn't like go hide or be scared. As soon as anyone came in that she didn't know, she would instantly be gone.
Yeah.
You
Wow.
really notice like which people she was calm with and she recognized. And as soon as there was anything she didn't recognize, she would instantly go hide. And then of course the added factor of they can hood, but they're not as dangerous. It's always a cool factor, even though she basically never hoods.
Yeah, yeah.
She's an extremely chill false water cobra, I must admit. She's the calmest snake I own. And I own a few species that are considered very handleable. Um, but yeah, generally their way of acting, how active they are, the fact that they swim, the diversity of food they eat, can literally feed her anything and she'll be happy with it. I'm pretty sure she would try and steal a bite of a cheeseburger if you gave her a chance. So yeah, just in general, the whole species also really love their coloring, the little
Yeah.
like eyeliner patches.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to jump back into her in a second, but obviously you bought her, and then you also have, as you'd mentioned, you'd acquired a couple other species. So what else do you keep now as well?
I have two Mexican black king snakes, which, by the way, also now are illegal to breed or trade in Europe
Oh
because they
wow.
are potentially they can establish populations here.
Yeah.
So, under the decree of exotic species that could establish, they're no longer allowed to be bred. So, same story now. If you had them, you can keep them. You're not allowed to sell them or breed them. I have a pair of Mandarin red snakes which are a relatively uncommon species. And then the most rare species I keep are rough-scaled pythons,
Mm.
Morelia carinata. Um, Hoping to breed them. Did pair them this year, but without success. So hopefully more success next year. But yeah, they are a very uncommon species. Very little is known about them. Can't even find a proper lifespan for them.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's quite a deviation from the other more colubrid or colubroids, I should say, after listening to or reading Zach's book. Where did the pythons come into the mix?
I actually didn't originally get them myself. A friend of mine kept a whole lot of species. He was stopping with the hobby and he originally contacted me because he had seen posts of my enclosure and he's like, if I want to drop my snakes somewhere, I want them to be good. And he was like, if that's the kind of enclosure they get, you can have them.
Yeah.
Of course, I couldn't keep all his snakes. That was too many. I prefer giving them nice size enclosures and keeping a bit less animals than getting like 100 different animals and shoving them in racks. That's really not something I'm into.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the pythons, considering how rare they are, if you just try and buy a single one, a baby is costing you about 2K.
Hmm.
So for the price, I was able to get them, knowing it's a breeding pair. Yeah,
It
in
made
that case,
sense.
I was like, they are so unique. I'm usually generally not into python species and boa species, but yeah, they're just so unique. They're gorgeous snakes in coloring and looks. So yeah, when I saw his list of snakes and I saw a pair of those on there, I was like, yep, those I will claim.
Yes. Yeah. I think it would be hard to go wrong with a rough scale python, especially a breeding pair. That's really cool. So
Yeah.
let's jump
So
back to the falsy then. If unless you had another thing to say about the rough scales.
oh, just so hoping that they will actually get to breeding.
Oh
That
yeah,
would
I
be
hope so
great.
too. Yeah, that will be quite a project. So as far as jumping, getting the falsy to begin with, I'm sure you found a breeder, and I would love to know just about the story. About picking her up and getting her for the first time. Were you concerned, or were you worried or intimidated? And then also, can you let us know her name as well?
Sure. So I got her from a breeder in England. That was the only one that I could at the time find that had babies on hand, that looked healthy, that looked fine. Contacted him. Then the most difficult part was getting a meetup set before the law became active, which ended up being the Hum Expo, Reptile Expo in Germany. So we moved into my house on Friday and then had a housewarming on Saturday, made the trip on Sunday. So that was four
Wow.
and a half hours there. Pick her up. We never even entered the expo because we thought of entering. We had an hour wait time before the breeder got there. The line was so massive that we would never have gotten in within an hour. So we just waited outside, grabbed her, got in our car, drove back an hour and 4 hours and a half because didn't want to open the box on the parking and risk her getting out.
Yeah.
Godo was overexcited and then had the shaking hands because she was still a baby and so tiny, and I was scared of hurting her. And yeah, had me waiting so long, finally getting my first own snake. So I was like, I want to hold her and I want to handle her, but at the same time, she just had a trip from England to Germany to Belgium. So was like, take her out, check her out for a minute, put her in the enclosure, leave her alone for a bit, like stuck to the leave the animal alone for a few weeks first, let them settle in, make sure they
Hmm.
eat well, which with a fall season not really that much of an issue, the eating well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, then after a few weeks, started a regime of handling her frequently to getting her used to being handled. Expected to be bitten because it's a baby snake, you're a huge human. They don't know you, so she did bit me quite a few times as a baby. Honestly, never personally got a reaction of it. We were always just there. She never latched on and kept chewing.
Hmm.
Always had a little spray bottle with vodka on hand in case she were to latch on and hold on, just to have an efficient way to quickly get her off. And a bank card, of course, to like get under the under the teeth if necessary. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, generally, just mostly went into it with thinking rather have her bite me as a baby a few times and be chill as an adult, which now she is. She did bite me recently once, but that was just me being busy in the enclosure on plants, and I didn't see her sneak up. She thought there was food, just too slowly retracting, and she just like nicked my tongue. So it wasn't like a proper bite, just like a little nick. But yeah, generally speaking, once you take her out, she's very calm. And yeah, besides that, I think if you've done your research and you know what you're getting into, you know you'll get a snake that grows really fast. It's most likely gonna bite you a few times, especially as a baby. They won't hold back that easily in terms of biting. So yeah, I think if you want to get that kind of a snake as a first one, yeah, having done your research and knowing what you're gonna expect is quite a must in that regard.
Yes, yeah. It's not going to be a ball python. That's going to be pretty calm and slow. It's a fast
Yeah,
moving, hungry snake.
yeah, we definitely not recommend them as an impulse buy. Like I said, like since 6 years I wanted one. I moved into my house when I was 22, so that was 16 years of basically constant research and watching videos on reptiles, different species, different setups they need, the requirements of the different animals, the risks with different animals. Because back in the day, for example, hots were still allowed. You could keep venomous back in the day
Right.
here. So then there is a thing of, would I want to get one of those? If yes, what kind of training would you want? Because in America, there is regulations of like you need to work under someone to get like a license for rattlesnakes or for cobras or for mambas. Here, that wasn't the case. Back in the day, everything was allowed and you just kept it if you wanted it.
Right.
End of discussion. And after a whole lot of things going wrong, people releasing animals that definitely shouldn't be here in the wild, knowing that the only venomous snake here in Belgium isn't lethal. If people start releasing hots that are lethal, that can pose quite a lot of threats. Um, but regardless of that, also people buying a retic on a expo as a baby because it's nice and cute and tiny.
Hmm.
And then it grows into this massive 6 meters, 20-foot snake, which they can't feed because the meals they eat are way too big for them to buy. They can't house them properly. They would get dropped off at rescues, and it was becoming such a big issue that, yeah, or people, snakes that are endangered, or reptiles, cases with turtles, endangered species that were like taken from the wild, kept in someone's garage, being sold on the black market. When a lot of those cases pile up, that's how the positive list came to be,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As annoying as a positive list is, sometimes you can't really blame the government. You're like, well, this is kind of what's happened over the last like 10 years of letting people do whatever they want. So yeah, it is a frustrating thing, but at the same time, you can kind of understand it. And can you remind me of her name again?
Tanuki.
Tanuki.
Um,
That's right. What does it
it
mean?
actually means raccoon dog.
Oh, okay. Is it, what language is it?
Japanese.
Oh, it's Japanese. Okay.
Raccoon dogs are the Japanese variant of raccoons. They look a
Yeah.
bit similar. They have like the same eye lines. And
Okay.
there is a funny mythical thingy around them that might not be safe for younger viewers.
So we can let people Google that on their own.
Yes, they can look up the Tanuki lore.
Tanuki lore. Okay, that'll be a mission for anybody listening. They can go figure that out on their own. So, was she successful immediately in that large enclosure? Like, did you have any worries at any point, or was it like right away she was okay?
She was actually quite okay. Me, on the other hand, that is a different thing. Because she was quite small in such a big enclosure, she got to hide herself quite easily. And of
Uh,
course, as a first snake owner, and all the stories you hear about snakes escaping,
yeah.
if you don't see her for a certain amount of time, you start to panic. And then there was me being like, this enclosure is full of live plants and everything. Do I go tear it all down because I can't spot her anywhere? Or do I just wait it out?
Yeah.
And then the longer you wait it out, the more panic you get. And at some point, you do tear it all down, only to find her somewhere hiding and be like, yeah, I'm a complete idiot.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, after a while, you just accept that, yeah, she'll be hidden for sometimes, like sometimes a day, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks. You can't help it. It's a snake. And if you want to see your animal all the time, that's not the kind of enclosure to get. But at the same time, then a snake is also not the animal to get.
Yes, yeah. I did the same thing with my little Japanese rat snake. I had a pretty large enclosure, and he's just so small. I mean, when they're curled up, they're just tiny. And so many times I'm like, wow, he figured out a way to get out. Like there's even though I don't think there's a way to escape, he must have escaped. And then yeah, like you said, you tear everything up, and there he is, curled up in a tiny corner, and then you feel bad because you've just destroyed his home. So yeah, as long as you make them real tight enclosures, they probably aren't going to get out, and you just let them be.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have my Mandarin red snakes that are like about 2 foot that are in like a 4 foot enclosure. If they're rolled up somewhere, they're about yay big.
Yeah.
Like they are snakes that are fairly small. They're for colubrids also quite thin bodied. So they really, despite their bright yellow colors, hide all the time. They're always burrowed. So I think in general I see those snakes maybe 15 times in a whole year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just accept it. It's just how it is. If I manage to breed those someday and someone wants to buy them from me, I'll be honest about it and be like, they're gorgeous snakes. You'll just never see them.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah.
have to accept that. That's one of the reasons why I really was interested in getting a falsie. They are so active, and once they get to a certain size, they get a bit braver in just being out in the open when there is a lot of movement. Back in the day, I would start to get the vacuum out, and she would instantly go hide. And
Mm.
by the end, she would see the vacuum move and be tracing it all the time, thinking that was food.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is there anything that jumps out immediately that you learned in the first few years of owning a falsie that you think would be helpful for somebody that might be interested? Or, whether, there's a few things that you say, like, if you don't like this, then you shouldn't get one, or vice versa?
A few things. One, as many people say, their waste does have a potent smell.
Yeah.
I will admit, my enclosure are fully bioactive. They have a bit of variety in critters in there, and usually within a few hours, it tends to break down the smell quite a lot after a poop. But what I usually also do is, if I do see that she just dropped one plain in the open in the front, I'll just throw some dirt on top of it because it will speed up the process of the insects getting on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the dirt will also damp the smell a bit.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But also their strength. I really, really, really underestimated their strength. In her first enclosure, I can provide you some pictures if you want of what they used to be like.
Mm-hmm.
I created in the water compartment a waterfall, and I had attached it with like a big amount of silicone on 3 different points. And when I say a big amount, like pieces like this, fully covered in silicone.
Yeah.
It was completely stuck against the glass in the corner, with then just the space for the tube to run up. Over time, somehow, she managed to not only push her way in between that silicone, the glass, and the waterfall, but she completely dislodged the whole thing, including the whole compartment that was separating the pump from the actual water. Like it was hidden behind the waterfall, so she couldn't get to it. But she
Right.
completely ripped off everything there just by consistently getting more and more in between and then pushing up and going in between and pushing a bit more. And eventually she got the whole thing out. And for the last half year she lived in there, there just was no waterfall and the pump was just loose in there because there was nothing to separate it. I couldn't just go fixing it that quickly.
Yes.
Um, Yeah, the strength they have, I think I quite underestimate it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's a good one because I've only seen one falsie in my whole life, and just like a couple months ago, really. And yeah, they're obviously very powerful snakes. They're very, I mean, if they're going to be a good swimmer and good climbers, you need to have lots of core strength and whatnot. So that can be a pretty intimidating if you're not used to working with an animal like that. It's probably good to start as a baby, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. As a baby, they're quite easy. Like it's a 1 foot, like 30 centimeter little noodle,
Hmm.
about as big as my thumb. Even if she does bite me, she can't even take more than a finger.
Yeah,
Um, as soon as they like at 1 year old, I think she was 120 centimeters, which is about 4 foot. So
yeah.
yeah, they do grow significant at a significant pace. If I compare it to my Mexican black king snakes, my Mandarin snakes even slower. Took them like 4 years, and they're still not to a size where I feel comfortable breeding them
Hmm.
because they're still so small. Whereas my false water cobra, at 2 years, she was nearing like I'd say meter and a half, meter 60, which is a bit over 5 foot.
Right. And
So
how big is
yeah,
she
that
now?
um I think she would be nearing the 7 foot mark.
Okay.
I think she would be just about 200 centimeters, which is just under 7 foot.
Yeah, yeah.
She's now the
Yes.
length that her previous enclosure used to be.
Right. So they are big snakes too. That's the other thing to remember. They're not small.
She actually once bruised my neck. I had a route. She was around my neck, and I had a top with a hole in the back. And she crawled through the hole and started slipping because it was like quite a soft texture. She couldn't really hold on to it. And her first reaction, because she started falling, was just grab on. And so she was around my neck, and she was holding on tight enough to actually put bruises on my neck.
That's crazy.
So just goes to show the sheer strength they have. Like, of course, I just put her on the like leaned on the couch so she could get down and she let go. But for the I'd say 30 seconds she was holding, that was enough to actually put like three nice bruises down my neck. So yeah, they have a significant amount of strength. And starting from a certain size, I wouldn't recommend people putting them around their neck just freely without anyone there, which I would never recommend with any bigger snake, not with a boa either.
Hmm.
People
Yeah.
consider them safe to handle solo, but I think any big snake, if they manage to get around your neck and they tuck their tail under, you can't get them off that easily. I noticed that very quickly that moment.
Yes.
I really love her and I'm very comfortable with her to get her out, but it did make me quite conscious about also what I wear when I get her out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good tip. I'm the same way. I never put my snakes around my neck. I know how strong, especially the boas are. I mean, when they've had them sort of, sometimes they'll sort of handcuff you, by just wrapping around your wrists, and then you kind of have to wait for them to leave. Yeah, exactly, because you can't get them off. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure to make you pass out, with, cutting off the
No.
blood flow to the neck. So I think that's a good tip. So I'm just curious. You set up with this large 7 foot enclosure. When you did that, were you initially expecting that to be her adult enclosure, and then you realized later on that you needed to go bigger, or were you always thinking that this would be a stepping stone?
It from the get-go was the idea of getting her something bigger down the line.
Okay.
The thing was more not knowing at which pace she would realistically grow. Like, of course, online they always say that they grow fast. You can expect them to grow about this much in this much time. But yeah, when you hear a lot of people say that they keep theirs in a 6 foot enclosure as an adult, I thought like, yeah, I will have the time to build the big one. It's not gonna look that small still. But then once she hit like 4 foot, in that moment, I already thought that it was getting small. So that's the moment where I decided, okay, the plans of starting the big build will start soon because I knew it was going to take a lot of time. So I think, yeah, when she was about a year old, that's when we started the big build. Maybe a bit later, year and a half, but somewhere around the time.
So let's talk about the planning of this, because it looks like it takes up a good half a room for sure in your home. So I'm just curious, like, obviously the idea was, okay, we're going to go a big enclosure. Did you have any idea how you were going to do it, or did you just start with the concept of a large enclosure?
So the very first thing I did was I looked up if I had a company custom built a base structure, what would have costed. And that was about 10K, which I was like, nope, never
Hmm.
mind, because that's literally without the water compartment. That was just the enclosure, the land part, without any plants, without any ledges, nothing, just base structure. I was like, that's way too expensive for that price. I make the whole thing. So started first of all designing just on paper, like what's the general shape we want. The discussions of water compartment inside the enclosure or outside, which ended up being outside for the main reason of maintaining the humidity.
Mm.
Her previous one had the water feature inside, and it does really quick up the humidity consistently. So then you need to add ventilation to reduce it again. So it just adds a lot of parts. Way more dirt that gets dragged into it from her end. So yeah, decided to just keep them separate for ease. Um, Also, just not losing land space.
Right.
If you add the water compartment in there, it's like X amount of square foot you lose. Once the basic design was drawn out, we realized, okay, we will need to support everything because over that size, everything is just going to sag otherwise. So got angle bars hardened, quite thick ones in steel, um, all cut to size, put them together into a massive frame. Inside that frame, we started putting up the wood to just make a base structure, like just an empty box, basically,
So you
with
basically
two
took these
sides open.
L-shaped sort of steel and basically made a hollow box, and then took
Yeah,
what looked like OSB or
yeah.
chipboard and put that
It was
inside.
actually OSB.
Okay. And
So
can you quickly say the dimensions as well?
So in meters, it's 4 meters long, 1 meter 80 wide, 2 meters 10 tall for the land compartment. So that would be in foot, I think a bit under 14 foot for the length, about 6 foot wide, 7 foot tall. And then the water compartment is 120 centimeters long, so 1 meter 20 by 90 by 90. So 4 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot
Hmm.
for the water, which I think comes to, for the water, about 260-ish, 64 gallons, about 1,000 liters. And then the land compartment is a bit over 4,000 gallons converted.
Right. Yeah. So lots of space.
A lot of space. Waterproofing, honestly, just a massive amount of pond foil, the stuff you use to make ponds, like
So that was the next step
pond liner.
after putting the wood up.
Yeah, just waterproof all the wood, because yeah, real plants, soil, watering everything. I literally water it with a hose currently,
Mm.
working on a rain system, but currently it's water with a hose. So yeah, there is, I think, easily 10, 15 liters at a time of water going in when I water it. So of course, it needed to be waterproofed quite well. So pond liner everywhere. After that, it was putting up ledges, made those with concrete. I think that was about the hardest part of the build itself, because I wanted to make them as realistic as possible. Choice materials concrete, but then concrete is heavy, so you can't
Right.
just put massive blocks of concrete up on the wall. So first made those out of wood, reinforced those, then put pond foil over them, so that wood was waterproofed. Then metal mesh, and then built the cement layer by layer up on there. That ended up working
Now,
with
are
a
those
few
ledges,
fails.
are they screwed into the wall studs, or are they just screwed into the enclosure, or how are you
Uh,
securing them?
they are secured onto the OSB panels, the vertical ones,
Okay. Okay.
with a reinforcement on the back. Like they're strong enough to hold my weight without an issue. Because
Gotcha.
when I
Okay.
was working on different parts, I was basically always sitting on top of them when I had to work up in height.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like all the lamps, the electricity, I had to work on the backside, but I can't really walk behind it anymore. So
So when you were building it, you could walk behind.
I couldn't. So I had to climb on top of the ledges to lean
Oh, I
over
see.
it.
Okay. 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 Gotcha. Gotcha.
So
So
yeah,
does that space still exist between the back of the enclosure and the wall?
you can look in between it. Like if she were to ever get out, she could perfectly get in between there.
Okay.
But I personally don't fit in there. Like
Okay.
there
So
is
it's a
only a
small.
gap between the side and the wall, So on the side, I can still get in between because that's where like the plug for the electricity and everything is.
Right. Yeah.
But I can't get behind it. It's
Okay. Gotcha.
almost against the wall, basically.
Gotcha.
Just leaving space for cable management and everything.
Yeah, yeah. It's just such a commitment when you see somebody do something like this because I mean I know you own your house or you purchased a house, so I assume that enclosure cannot leave that room.
No. To give an idea, the frame for the pond is actually welded. That frame was welded inside the room because it's too big, it doesn't fit through the door. So it had to
Wow.
be welded in the room. So we did as much as we could outside, of course, but then the last bits of actually putting the last bits together, that was on inside of the room because it doesn't fit through a door. So
Right. So
yeah,
so you guys actually made the tank out of angle iron as well, and then
yeah.
put so okay. So you've waterproof. You've made the shelves, and then maybe I'll let you continue kind of after the shelving. What was the next step?
I think the next step I did was first put a front ledge that would keep all the dirt in, and the glass would come in front of there.
Yeah.
Because with the size of glass, it was just not doable to put it on top of the ledge. I would need such a massive wide piece of wood to support that weight.
Right.
So yeah, put the ledge in there, prepped everything to measure out till where I needed sliding panels until where the pond would attach, so I could close it off. Put a panel the same height as the pond on the inside of the enclosure. So basically, at that point, you had the whole casing of the enclosure, sides, back, a ledge at the front, a bar separating that ledge, and then the front connected to the pond. So the whole front was closed minus the glass.
Right.
It still needed all the glass, of course, to really close it off. Once all of that was done, I could waterproof the front ledge, the panel, put all the drainage in, like the hydro balls, cover
Yeah.
the whole bottom with a good layer of those.
Oh my! You
Put
must have had to
screen-
buy so many.
yeah, that was. I still have videos on my phone, both for those and the substrate. I basically went to the store, got a whole like pallet because they did an action. If you bought like 2 bags, you got one for free. So I went in there like, I need 36. They're like, that's a whole pallet. I'm like, great, I'll get the whole pallet then.
Yeah.
Needed like 2 trips because my car couldn't carry as much weight in one trip.
Oh
In
my
Belgium, we
gosh.
don't do pickup trucks really. Our roads are really not big enough to do big pickup trucks. So I have a decent sized car, but it just couldn't get as much weight in. So there was several trips back and forth. Also, this enclosure is on the first floor of my house, so we had to carry them all up.
So when you say first floor, do you mean you go upstairs to get to it?
Yeah,
Wow.
a lot of
So
people
were you
really.
concerned about the weight at all?
I bought this house as a rough construction, so I had all the paperwork of the calculations that had been done for the weight everything can carry. Like I can slightly tilt up my screen because my house is still not finished. These are massive concrete slabs
So are you in a
that are.
basement right now, or are you on a main floor? Like outside is the
This is my
ground.
ground floor, like the living room floor.
Okay.
Don't
So
have a
there's
basement.
concrete.
I do have an attic.
Okay. Okay. I got you. So basically, for those who are just listening, the ceiling above your head is just like slabs of concrete.
Yeah, and those are like 1 foot, so 30 centimeters. They
Wow.
have 3 layers of metal grid reinforcements and metal fiber in there. I think it was calculated that it could carry about a ton a square meter. So for every 3 square foot, I think it is more or less, it can carry 1 ton.
That's
And the
okay. So you're fine.
calculations, yeah, the enclosure, I think the whole thing together with the soil watered down, everything would be anywhere between 4 to 5 tons, separated over nearly 10 square meters, which
Yeah.
can carry 10 tons, so half the weight of what it can carry. Plus, it's built against support walls,
Mhm.
where it's also a bit stronger. It can carry, I think, 1.5 times the weight. So, did definitely do the calculations prior to
Yeah.
starting the build because it was definitely something I thought about before starting. But yeah, once I did the calculations and I realized how much it could carry, But a lot of people that see this are from America, and they build very differently than here. Like I always laugh, my house has been built for World War III, really.
Yeah.
Um,
I've never
you
seen
also,
like thick concrete floor like that for because what we would call, I'm in Canada, but I mean even here we would build everything's out of wood, and it's just just floor joists with made out of 2x4s and then subfloor on top. And I would think like, yeah, that's not gonna hold. It holds enough, furniture and all that, but it's not gonna
yeah,
hold a ton of weight.
no, no, no. Like here, like once you're inside of my house, I actually don't have connection with my phone because of all the amount of
Concrete.
concrete and
Yeah.
metal reinforcements. I need to go to my attic to be able to call people
Oh
on my phone.
wow.
So it has its advantages for building crazy projects like this. Disadvantage for general other stuff, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so yeah, the hydro balls, that was quite a lot because I wanted to fill at least, I'd say, 2 to 3 inch of them to have a decent amount of drainage. Then got the netting to separate it, glued in the netting because I know her, it's a falsie. She'll get eventually under it if you don't like fixate it.
Yeah.
Um, then topped it off with the substrate, which was 36 bags of just topsoil mixed with another, I think I added about 6 or 7 bags of like the play sand, moss, bark pieces, leaf litter, like, the whole general bioactive mix.
Yeah. Yeah.
The mixing itself happened inside the enclosure because no way I was going to do all of that in tubs.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. So
Just
you're
actually throw
standing in the
everything.
enclosure, mixing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically just like throw it all in together, like throw a bag of sand in, a few of the topsoil, a bit of the moss, a bit more soil, and then just like few mates like come over, have fun, get dirty, throw around some dirt.
Yeah.
Once all of that was in, then the for me fun bit began of putting all the wood in. Finding the branches was quite a challenge too, to find just decent size, big enough that could support her weight. Screaming all together so they would not just topple over when she's being clumsy on them,
Hmm.
because she definitely is. And then deciding where all the lamps would come. Wanted two on height, so there is two heat lamps on shining on ledges, and then there is two heat lamps shining like lower on the floor of the enclosure. Um, Everything is heated with halogen heat lamps, mostly because they just create a decent spot of
Yeah.
heat without heating too much of the environment, because the whole room is heated to a general 24, 25 Celsius.
Okay.
It holds my most of my other snakes too. I have a few here, but the rest are upstairs. So yeah, generally the room itself is already heated to a minimum temperature that provides the cold side, so to speak.
Yeah.
And anything besides those four spots are cold spots, or
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
cold side. Which honestly, she half of the time just sits in the water, which is, I would say, the coldest of it all. Um, she'll really vary between being in the water where it's a bit fresher and chilling under heat lamps. So
Okay. Now, can you quickly explain to everybody how you've strung the heat lamps in there? Because I'm sure people are thinking, okay, it's a 7 foot tall enclosure, basically just a room. Obviously, they're not like on top of the screen, just shining down 7 feet, because you're gonna lose all that heat. So how have you accomplished that?
yeah, so of course halogens, they don't shine 7 foot down. You
Yeah.
wouldn't get any heat that far down. So the bulbs themselves are mounted inside special caps, basically. They are made so that they reflect all the heat down. So the outside of the cap actually stays really quite relatively cold. So
It's like the
we've
outside of
done
the dome,
tests.
basically.
Yeah, so the dome itself actually stays extremely cold for what it is. We've done the test by literally putting things over it and then measuring the temperature that it would reach with something covering it completely. And it didn't even get hot enough to cover the cold side, basically.
Okay, so that's good news.
Yeah. So I've had people that worry like, isn't she gonna get burned? Like it's dangerous. Of course, on the bottom of the the dome, there is something covering like a grid, so she can't reach the bulb itself.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I've seen her lay on top of the domes,
With no
and
issues.
she has never gotten a burn, never gotten an issue. I've always checked it, especially in the first few weeks she was in there. She would quite often lay on top of them because it's a falsie. They like to be up in height, and it's a high spot in there.
Hmm.
So she will just chill on top of the dome instead of just on a ledge, as falsies are.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, of course, at those moments, I would leave her. And then as soon as I saw her climb down, I'd be like, come here, you, let's check. And yeah, she never
no
had
issues.
anything. Always felt, she never really even felt hot on the spot. So,
So how
um,
are you stringing them down? Like I've seen, I know there's a couple, looks like there's some that are a little bit higher, some that are kind of a
yeah,
little bit lower. They're just sort of on a cord. Can they swing freely, or have you tried to secure them in a way?
they're fully secured. As I know her, and I said earlier, one of the things I back in the day underestimated was their strength.
Right,
I knew that if I just hung him from the cable, she would probably just separate the cable and lump at some point, and then it's a massive risk with three wires.
right.
So what I did is, you probably have them too in America or Canada. You have the things that they use just in the house when they're building to hold down tubes into a wall. It's like this anchor you put in a wall, and then it's two parts that go around the tube, and then
Okay.
you screw them down.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what I actually used. I just bought the very big versions of them that fitted around the top of the dome, and they clamp around there. And then those are anchored into the wall at
Gotcha.
an angle, so that they're basically just shining down on the spot without her being able to move them. The ones on the lower part, one of them, for example, is put into the wood. So one of the branches, the big branches, it's fixated at the back side of the wood, so you can't see it. But yeah, it is anchored there.
Gotcha. Okay,
And
that
then the
makes sense.
cables are like lined along the wood, all attached, very fixed on the wood, so she can't just like pull them out.
And can't get under
Uh,
them and start
yeah,
yanking
yeah.
it off. Yeah.
But they're like nicely tucked away on the back of the woods, so you can't actually visually see them.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so you got the soil in there, you got the heat in there. As you said, it's the fun part now. So I'm sure you're starting to plant at this point.
I had most plants in my house for like already the last year for a few reasons. One of them being usually if you want to put plants in an enclosure, the normal steps would be you get a plant, you fully wash it, you clean all the dirt off the roots, so you're sure you don't put any pests in the enclosure. Now, this really wasn't an option. I had a few plants that were like, I'd say 5 or 6 foot tall when they went in, being in pots, like big pots,
Huge
a lot
pots.
of soil. I didn't have anything I could rinse them under. They were just too tall. Couldn't just take them to a sink and rinse them.
Right.
Um, so I would just bought them very early on and then had them grow indoors, made sure that they were pest free by the time they went in the enclosure. So I could
Gotcha.
just take them out with all the dirt on there, drop them in. It's less shocking to the plants. And yeah, it's a bit easier for me.
And what kind of plants were
Um,
they?
Tree fern, that is, I think, one of the bigger ones that is just that one I guess was easier to move because you just can lift up the whole stump, just carry it around.
Yeah, yeah.
Downside, it has giant fucking leaves. So I needed someone to come and help me hold all the leaves down while walking upstairs because yeah, my hallway wasn't that wide.
Yeah.
And then a paradise bird plant.
Okay. Yeah.
They grow very, very big and yeah, it also just really wasn't practical. I think it were like 4 or 5 different ones in one pot. So it was a very big white plant
Sure.
and yeah, needed two people just to carry it, let alone to clean them. Besides that, I had a zirconia, often called CZ plant. Um, Also a very big one. I've had that for the last 2 years, just in my living room growing in the south window in full sun. So that one was really big. It has a lot of different branches with a lot of different leaves. So probably if I tried to wash that off, it would have broken off most of the leaves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I
are they
could
doing
try.
okay? Are they doing okay in the enclosure?
Most are, I would say, the only one that had a really hard time. recently was the paradise bird plant. It's currently standing behind the computer in my living room. It had a pest on there, stupid
Okay.
little insects.
Yes, I know those are
Um,
the a pain.
yeah, and to treat it, I took it completely out because I tried any method that is nothing chemical, and nothing seemed to work because the specific pest in question, don't know what you call them in English. They're the little lice that get a shield over them.
Yeah, like scale. We call them like scale bugs or scaly. Like yeah,
Yeah,
I think scaly bugs. Yeah, so they don't even really look like bugs, and then you kind
no,
of
they
take a
just look
closer
like
look.
little bumps.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So at first I didn't realize, and of course by the time I realized, it was quite infestation on them. So to prevent them getting on my other plants in there, because the rest wasn't infested, I took it out, tried first non-chemical treatment, but those little buggers just handle everything apparently. Alcohol was too damaging for the plant itself, so currently treating it. It's growing new leaves, so it's pulling through. Once it's healthier, it's probably just going to be moved back in
Yeah.
because it was really doing well there. It just, yeah. If you have a lot of real plants, pests is one thing that everyone has at some point dealt with.
Oh yeah, and that one specifically, I've had trouble with as well, and a lot of times I just go heavy prune, and then help the plant come back to life because it's
Yeah.
like really tough to get to kill them.
Yeah. It's basically what I had to do. Like the worst infected leaves have been pruned off. Got a product that does kill them, but it's very chemical. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you
you
can't have it
can't
in the
use it.
enclosure.
Yeah, so definitely had to take it out anyways.
And they do kill the
Afterwards,
plant. Like those little things, like just suck the energy out of a
oh
plant. You'll
yeah,
see like the sprout come up, or like a new shoot happen, and then suddenly the shoot will die, and then you're like, what the
yeah,
hell's going on
exactly.
here? And then you realize, oh, these things are draining this plant. I just want to take a short break from today's episode to thank each and every one of you for tuning in today. If you would like to show more support for the podcast, you can do that by checking out the show's sponsor, Custom Reptile Habitats. There is an affiliate link in both the YouTube description and the show notes. If you do make a purchase through that link, a commission comes back to me at no extra cost to you. The other way you can show support to the podcast is through the Patreon account. For as little as 75 cents per episode, you will automatically be added to the Discord server so you can communicate and chat with other like-minded keepers. If you do bump yourself up to the $5 a month tier, you'll have early access to the episodes and the opportunity to submit questions to upcoming guests. Again, I am so grateful for each and every one of you. This podcast is a lot of work and costs me a lot of money each month to run, and any support coming from your end is greatly appreciated. Back to the episode.
So that was the only one. Like, I think a few small plants that she just squashed really with her
Yeah.
big butt. Um, she always climbs over every single plant. Like the CZ plant used to have like very vertical branches, and by now they all like slope down against the floor, and they're not dead. They're still healthy as can be. It's just
She's
that
just
she always,
redecorated.
yeah, she always lays on top of them, and I've literally seen her like curled up in the center on top of the plant. So she's just like squishing them all down.
Yeah.
So the plant has just given up, and it's like, fine, I'll grow like this now. But yeah, I had some very colorful plants, but I knew they were quite easy to break. So I knew at some point she'll just break them. But honestly, besides those, most do quite well. Some spots have a lot of light. I have four plant growth lights in each corner, so they all shine towards the center. So some spots get a lot of light, others less due to bigger plants in front of them.
Right.
And it's a bit of being selective. If you keep a lot of plants, you know which ones do well in shade, which ones do well in full sun, and you select them a bit based on that. And of course, it's plants, they'll find their own way.
Yes.
If they are
Yeah.
not happy, they'll just start growing the other way and make sure they are happy. So that's the fun about plants.
Yeah. The biggest thing with plants is just being patient and just letting them do their thing, and then providing them the light and the water, and then you're good. Did you do anything? So you were talking about the putting the clay balls in for drainage. Did you do anything to the enclosure to allow you to drain the drainage layer, or are you not worried about any water buildup in there?
I did not, for the simple fact that
It would have been a
in none of
nightmare.
my enclosures, I never had an issue with it really. I've known friends that have done it before, never really had an issue or never had to do it. I think if you are a bit smart about how you water, it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
Some plants require more water, and I'll water them heavier, but then I'll water the other side less because I know the water will seep through. It
Yeah.
will like stabilize on the bottom because well the floor is level, and it will just start draining up from there again. But yeah, I do add like 10 to 15 liters easily when I water, but of course I don't water every day either.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the tree fern requires water on a daily in the top of it. Every single day, I'll just take a bottle, fill it up with a liter of water, dump it in the top, but then not water the rest.
Yes. Yeah. That makes
So,
sense.
yeah, bromeliads, if I see that the tops get empty, I just fill those up separate, but I won't go watering the whole enclosure just for those three plants.
Yes.
I'll wait until the top layer starts drying up and then everything's get watered, which is, I'd say, about twice a week.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, okay, so that's basically the enclosure. As far as the glass goes, that must not have been a cheap part, is putting the glass front on.
No, that is actually the part that put the project on hold the longest. So the project took 2 years, but the actual build time was about half a year. For nearly a year and a half in total, bit of spacing here and there, but in total a year and a half, I didn't work on it because I was lacking the budget to buy all the glass, which was cheaper if I bought it all at once, but it was, I think, altogether, just the three sliding panels from the front were a bit over 700.
Right.
Then the little panel on top that was fairly cheap, it was like $50. But then the water for the glass for the aquarium, I think was another 300. And yeah, I also have my house to pay off. The
Of course,
electricity
yeah.
bill with all the other enclosures is also there. Now I have solar panels, but back then I didn't. So the bill of electricity was also quite expensive. And so yeah, all the glass together, I would say was easily 1K, bit more probably. Which all in all together isn't too bad, but yeah, if you have to just put it down suddenly and you have all your other costs going on, it's
It's a
easier
lot.
said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you tell us about those sliding panes? So you have the glass. Are they in tracks, or how do they function?
So they're actually normally they're to be used as indoor walls for in houses, like for example in a bathroom.
Okay.
Or like a fancy separation in an office. That's technically what they're used for. But as my enclosure is 2 meters 10 tall, that's about the height of the door. It was way easier to just buy something that was meant to be used as a wall or like a sliding glass wall than customized panels for an enclosure.
Sure.
Because these came with the tracks, with everything to put on, with wheels in it, meant for the length, the weight, the size, everything. So yeah, I put something down to make sure that the bottom that the rail came on was nice and flat. Fixated the bottom and the top rail. Had some friends come over because the panels are, yeah, about 2 meters on one, I think 110, because they do have a bit of an overlap.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So they're heavy.
yeah, and you can't just put them like flat while lifting them because due to their size, it would just shatter. So you can only like lift them sideways. And yeah, it's heavy, it's big, they're like reinforced glass. Like I'm pretty sure if I would have dropped it to the corner of my tile would have broken, not the glass.
Wow.
It's yeah, they actually when loading it off, dropped it outside on the street with the corner. And there was a tiny chip in the glass, but nothing damaging to the glass itself, like nothing that was gonna risk it breaking. But there actually was a dent in the fucking concrete on the street.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So it was when they said it was hardened glass. Yeah, it was really, really hard glass. That's a fact. So I was not really scared of it breaking just by hitting something or being a bit clumsy with it and moving. But they did tell me if you were to move it and hold it flat, it will take about zero point 0.5 seconds to shatter.
So it's just so heavy that basically it can't support its own weight. Like
Yeah,
holding it lengthwise, it just crack in half, and it's probably tempered, so it would just create a
yeah,
smash everywhere. Yeah.
yeah. So they were like, it's very strong. You can like hit it on the sides. It's not a risk because to put the profiles on, it really felt so nasty to do because the profiles with the wheels. You had to put them on, but it's really tight, and you had to take a hammer and really just smack on it to
Oh,
get the profiles on. But it felt so wrong to do that on a glass panel. And I was like, like carefully, carefully. And my boyfriend just was like, give this to me. Bam! And I'm like, don't
yeah.
break him. But yeah, no, it basically was what you had to do, but it just felt so wrong to do.
Oh, and it's such an important part of the enclosure, right? You're like, it's kind of what finishes it off. And even just lining up the bottom track and the top track, like I've done that before, and that puts a lot of pressure on you because you're like, it's got to be exact. Like you need a
Yeah.
perfectly vertical line between the bottom and the top, and if it's not, like the glass can't sit on a slight angle. If it's like 2 degrees off, it's just not going to ride those tracks. So
No,
how
no.
did you make sure? Did you use like a laser or?
So for my job, my regular day job, it is related to construction. So a lot of my own clients work in construction. My own company produces material for construction. So I do have my connections. So I went to some of my own personal clients, asked them for the lasers that
Yes.
if you put it on one point, it will tell you the exact same point above you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just use those to line everything up. Made sure that it was all like level, and because yeah, glass that's not level is also quite an issue.
Yeah.
And yeah, then once those were in, we got little profiles that actually fit over the rails, the length of the opening between the glass and the side. Because she would definitely be able to just lay against the side and push a panel to the side.
Right.
So we needed to add profiles between the glass panels and the sides so she couldn't move them. That's basically the lock of the enclosure.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So so that's basically the terrestrial side of the enclosure. You have the branches, the plants, everything's planted, and now you've constructed this 260 whatever it was gallon basically aquarium that comes off it sort of like an L shape. So if anyone's listening, just picturing like you have this 4 meter by 4 meter by essentially 2 meter deep enclosure that's kind of at the back of a room, and then you have on the left hand side, we'll say, jutting out of an aquarium attached to the. So,
Yeah.
so tell me about that, because that, as you had mentioned earlier, that the idea was to pull the water feature out of the enclosure, so it's not taking up floor space. But I'm curious, how does the snake move in between those? How is that thing functioning?
Okay, so in general, how she can access it, so the filtration and everything is inside of the land compartment. It's actually behind the water compartment. If you would be able to look through the wall, you would be able to see it standing behind there.
Okay,
And then the side panel connected to her enclosure, there is different holes, two holes to connect the pump, so the in and outtake. Those are just the size of the tubing. And then next to that is about, I would say, 15 centimeters, which is a 7 foot hole, I
inch
would
hole, yeah,
say. Inch hole, yeah, foot, that would be massive. A 7 inch hole that she easily fits through. And so the hole is made on both the panel on the inside of the land compartment and on the side panel of the water. And those two holes on the inside are connected with like this rubber mat that we glued in.
so it's
So she
smooth.
can't get out of it. She can just like go from one to the other very easily. She knows the entrance very well. A
Yeah,
lot of people are like, yeah, and can she find it easily? Or like when she's swimming in the water, they're like, oh, but she's looking for the exit. I'm like, oh, she knows the exit very well, believe
yes,
me.
yeah,
Anytime we come into the room and we are doing anything in the snake room, she always hopes there is food coming. So if she's in the water, she'll instantly be like hanging with her head out of the hole into the land compartment, like looking directly around the corner at the glass, being like, "So you got a rat there for me?"
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, she definitely knows the exit without an issue.
Did you help her
Um,
find that hole initially, or did you put her in and then just let her explore?
Initially, we just put her in, let her explore. The very first time I did bait her towards there with a rat. She didn't go in. She was faster than me. She grabbed the rat and retracted.
Oh,
But then after she ate, I was like, I give up. I'll go up. Because I was working on something on the attic. It's like my workspace. And when I came back down, she was just swimming around. So I'm like, okay, she found it. All
yeah,
good.
yeah. She probably
Um,
already knew it was there too if she went there right after eating.
Yeah, most likely. Meanwhile, I've installed a camera in the enclosure that's motion detected, so now I can just like I get a notification anytime she's moving around. So I could just see that very often, like in the middle of the night, even she'll start moving around, go for a swim, go back out.
That's cool.
She'll go for a swim sometimes for like 5 minutes, sometimes she'll be in the water for days on end. But so yeah, they are connected. They are completely separate compartments. They're just connected by
A hole.
two holes that have a little mat in there, so she can't just get in the slit in between both compartments.
Okay, that makes sense. And then so the top of the aquarium has a lid, obviously, so she can't get out. Is that clear as well, or is that just I forget what you have up there?
It is wood, but it is like completely. It's I don't know what you call it in English. Here in Belgium, it's this type of wood that is being treated to be able to be used outdoors.
Oh, like
Like so,
pressure
even if it
treated. Yeah.
rains, um, and it has like this layer that is completely like
Waterproof.
epoxy, basically.
Okay,
So that's what I've used, and I just made a cut in the center, put point on it where I can open it, put a few
gotcha.
rails so it doesn't fall through when I try and close it, and that's just how I can open and close it very easily. Do water maintenance, check the parameters, feed the fish because there is a few fish living in there and a lot of shrimp to help with the cleanup. And yeah, besides that, also if she's in the water, I want to feed her. I really don't bother taking her out of the water because she'll just drag all the food back in.
Oh, okay.
So quite a mess when she does that, but
That's
that's
how it
one of the
goes.
parts of it. Not as bad as when she poops in the water, really. That is the real mess.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, generally speaking, when we did build the pond part the first time, we built it out of glass. And so the bottom panel and the side panel were some kind of plastic, like not plexiglass, it were like black panels,
Okay.
quite thick. Um, think nearly a bit under an inch. Um, I thought they were able to support the weight, well, pressure of the water. So those were the bottom and the side connecting to her enclosure because the bottom had a hole to drain out the water easily if necessary, and then the side had the holes for the water, the pump, and her connection. And I didn't feel like drilling those holes through glass, especially because I was using double layered glass, like hardened, reinforced with like a
Yeah.
layer of protection in between.
You can't
So
drill it. Yeah.
yeah, no. Um, and what ended up happening, so one of the glass panels cracked. The horror any person that has an aquarium in a house can or will know the
Yeah.
fear of having it crack and knowing it's 1,000 liters, the sheer volume. If that actually would have started leaking, that would have ruined my whole room because there is a lot of other enclosures, like I'd say 3 or 4 enclosures on the floor. Tanuki's her enclosure has been proof from the inside, like waterproof, but not from the outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it would have ruined a lot. Also, just the side of my walls, the door. That yeah, it would not have been good.
So which panel
Was
cracked?
the front one, like the biggest
Okay.
one in the front, you can actually see through. So I was here working from home. I was doing calls, and I was on a call with a client when I suddenly heard this loud. It sounded
Snap.
like someone closed the door, like when there is a lot of wind and it like slams closed.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell? I'm alone in the house. There shouldn't be that kind of noise. So I finish the call and I go check. And as soon as I walk into the room, I see the cracked panels. I'm like, oh, damn. So instantly started draining out most of the water until it was like just at the intake of the pump. So of course the pump couldn't be running dry. There was still fish and shrimp in there. I couldn't like just pull out the pump either. Close off the hole to the aquarium so Tanuki couldn't access it anymore. Because if she went in at that water level, she couldn't get out.
Right.
Um, the distance to the hole was way too much. So I instantly put like a big tub of water inside her enclosure, so she had access to fresh water. Um, and yeah, then had fun fishing out all the fish, the shrimps, everything. Have very funny photos of that, of me standing in like my slip and a t-shirt with a little net on my bare feet in the tank fishing for stuff.
Standing in the tank.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I like leaning over, it's too tall,
Oh
so
yeah, I
it's
see.
easier
Yeah.
standing in. So yeah, it can support my weight, so I just went in.
And
But
and,
the
and so
reason it
when it cracked, did any water start to dribble out a little bit, or was it all holding
no,
it in? That's crazy.
very lucky that I got like the double layered with like the basically the foil that is in between the layers kept it from cracking further.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so only one of the two panels, so it's like double layered, so you have two layers of glass on one panel, and only one of those two layers cracked.
Yeah. So it's like a
But of
windshield in a
course,
car.
yeah, it wasn't gonna take long before the second was gonna crack under that pressure.
Of course.
So yeah, I instantly had to drain that. What ended up happening was the panel, it's the black panels are called PE panels. That PE panel on the side under pressure was slowly and slowly bending slightly bit outwards.
Yeah.
Edges were pushing inwards because of that. And so those were putting increased pressure on the glass panels
Yeah.
consistently, bit more by more. And yeah, at some point it just ended up breaking. Took all of those out, ordered plexiglass panels. The biggest panels I think are at 1 inch, 1/5 of an inch, so 3 centimeters. So they're
Thick.
big. Um, for people that wonder if they want to do a similar project, I would definitely recommend don't start with glass. Instantly go for plexiglass. It
Hmm.
will save you the worry of it breaking. On the other hand, just the plexiglass and the glue, because it's a very special glue to glue that size, well, that thickness of plexi. You can't just use silicone.
Yeah.
That was 2.2K.
Oh, and you're talking
Just
euros.
yeah, euros, 2,200 euros for the glue and the plexiglass alone. So it is very expensive to get the plexiglass. It was about 1/4 of the whole price of the project, just the panels and the glue. But at the same time, if I had known from the beginning, I would have instantly done it with the plexi.
Yeah.
On the other hand, with the plexi, I didn't add a drainage in the bottom. So now there is substrate on the bottom, which it wasn't before because, yeah, there was a drain. It would have just
Gotcha.
sucked out all the substrate. Now I just drain it from the top, like
With the siphon. Yeah.
yeah, got quite a strong pump, so it can empty it quite fast. I'd say if I really want it completely empty, I could do it in about 20 minutes.
Okay. So
So,
that's not bad.
yeah.
Now, what about filtration? What are you using? And do you actually, I mean, you have some fish in there and some shrimp in there, but do you rely on the filtration for the snake herself or no? I mean, if she defecates or urinates in there, you have to change the water.
Um, Half and half. So as
Okay.
long as she doesn't defecate for general maintenance, I definitely rely on both the pump and the plants because all of the plants in the water are also live plants.
Right.
And they do a massive amount of work on removing nitrates from the water, especially when she has defecated in there. They will actually, like, let's say she defecates during the day. I'm out all day at work, as is my boyfriend. Neither of us is here to instantly clean it. It's the plants and the filter that will make it so that the water parameters don't get messed up so badly that all the fish and the shrimp will die.
Right. Yes.
There isn't that many in there, but the few that are there, still, I
It's a
want them to
lot.
live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they've been picked specifically for their size and their speed, because I don't want Tanuki to eat them. It's quite hard to find in general aquarium fish that don't contain thiaminase.
Yeah.
The It's quite risky for snakes if if they start eating it in large amounts. And once you were to be able to catch a fish, I know it back in the day I used to breed like small guppies for her because those are safe to eat. And once she got one, by the end of the day they would all be gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, if once she gets a taste, she keeps going. So now it's like only species that are fast enough or shrimp, which she doesn't mind. She doesn't care about those. But the filter itself is a canister filter, but it's meant for like it's a heavy duty one meant for ponds, outdoor
Okay.
ponds. So it's not like the one you would see for like an indoor aquarium. It's like the one that you would have for a 2,000 liter pond outside.
Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, this one moves about 2,000 liter every 30 minutes. So it can
Wow.
move about double the amount in half an hour. It has four-step filtration, UV light in there to really treat everything going through it. Besides that, there is the plants, of course, the fish and the shrimp. Like anytime she does defecate in the water, they are quite excited about it, I must say.
Hmm.
They actually enjoy eating from it.
I'm sure.
Uh, but yeah, anytime we do see that she has defecated, we try to grab the hose, suck out the worst of like the clumps, really. Also because at some point it will just clog the filter.
Yeah.
Um, so you get out the worst of it. There is like a little mesh over the filter to keep the worst out, especially the fur. That's about the worst. Like
Oh
if they
yeah. Yeah.
defecate, the fur comes with it. Like already, if she swims around after defecating, she will kick it everywhere, and you come into the room and you just see a tornado in the aquarium because there is
Yes.
like
Yeah.
fur floating everywhere in it, and you're just like, okay, we can get the worst clumps out, but then we'll have to wait until it all settles, and usually it will settle against the screen at the filter. Then we get the screen off, clean that out, put it back. But yeah, recently had just done the whole routine after she defecated in the water, drained out like 50% of the water, refilled that with fresh. That's about what we do on an average when she defecates. After a while, you learn that that's the amount you need to take out to have the parameters back to normal.
Yeah.
So a 50% water change on this volume does the trick. And then the day after, you come in the room and she has defecated again. That's a policy for you.
Yes. Yeah. Like.
So yeah, when you do build this size enclosure and you give them that size of water feature, no, you'll be consuming a lot of water.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And what about cleaning otherwise? Obviously like, you kind of just walk through what it's like when she defecates in the pond, but as you said earlier, they're sort of well known for the potency and the they are quite waste machines. So how do you find cleaning this entire enclosure? Is it okay?
Honestly, very little work. There is anything from springtails to isopods, which are the common things, millipedes, worms, superworms, the whole shenanigans, some types of beetles, um, a lot of different species of the different animals I listed. So different types of isopod, different types of millipedes, all of those, because they all attack different things separately. All of them love when she defecates.
Yeah.
So definitely already when I started off the enclosure, I tried to have the soil in as quickly as possible so that I could throw those in so they could start getting established. Because of course, if you start off, you throw a few handfuls. Okay, it was a bit more than handfuls in this case, but still, compared to the size, you're never gonna add enough to have a full ongoing colony.
Yes.
But yeah, you throw them in, you let them go for quite a while, and at this point, I will say that if she defecates, it takes him about half a day and most of it is gone,
Okay.
which
Wow,
is
that's
insanely
amazing.
fast. Even back in the day on our smaller size enclosures, that just wasn't doable. The amount of substrate just didn't allow for the amount of critters.
Yeah.
So it was never enough to really handle her size poops. But now that she has that amount of space, there is just so many of them that when she does defecate, you just see a mess around there. And afterwards, they just disperse again. But anything in the vicinity, as soon as they smell it, they'll just all go to it because it's good nutrition for them.
Yes. Well, that's such an important point because doing bioactive for snakes can be quite a challenge due to the amount of waste that they produce. Even though it's not as frequent as maybe like a lizard or something, it is just like so much that most systems can't handle it. So the point is like the reason yours can handle it is because you have such a
The
huge
sheer
enclosure with such a
size.
thick amount of substrate,
Yeah.
and it, like you said, it allows you to house such a large amount of. You couldn't have that many isopods in a smaller enclosure. They wouldn't be able to sustain themselves.
Yeah, no. Like for example, most of my other snakes, like often when I post the enclosure or pictures or videos or whatever, people go like, "Oh, you make us look like bad keepers." I'm like, well, if I were to turn around and fill my other enclosures, I would look like a bad keeper. Because
Yes.
one
Yeah.
of my snakes has this massive enclosure, and my other snakes are in more regular sized. Like, sure, I'm gonna rebuild the 2 meter one for the pythons and stuff, so they'll get a nice big one. But yeah, I think every animal has an enclosure that fits for them. My Mandarin red snakes are always burrowed, so they just have enclosures 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot with a massive amount of substrate because they like to burrow.
Hmm.
So that's fit to their preference. It has branches they can climb, of course, but they'll rarely be up in the height. They'll mostly be in the burrowed. Where the pythons like to climb, they're semi-arboreal. So they'll have a bunch of branches in the height and way less substrate in comparison.
Yeah.
But they usually always sit on one spot too. So they're not moving as much even at night compared to a falsy, or if you were to go for a lot of colubrid species, tend to be way more active than compared to boa and python species.
Yes.
So yeah, I think every animal has their best option of enclosure, or I wouldn't say optimal size. Of course, if I had the option, I would love to give all my snakes this size enclosure, but sadly enough, my house isn't that big.
Well, and you have to be, yeah,
Um,
realistic, right? Like, yes, it's amazing that you can provide this incredible enclosure for the falsy. Not everybody's going to be able to do that, and obviously, you can't do that for every snake you have. So you kind of have to
exactly.
pick and choose and try your best to make a smaller enclosure work to the best of its
Yeah.
ability.
Like it's a lot of people when I was building it were asking me like what is gonna go in there? And they were thinking it was gonna be for like an anaconda, a retic, a berm, some huge type of lizard. First of all, none of the different species, nor the big lizards, not anacondas or berms or retics, are allowed anymore because of
Right.
their size. Government was like, no one keeps these snakes in proper size enclosures, so we just don't allow them anymore. And honestly, I genuinely personally think that this enclosure is too small for a retic or a berm. Not
Yes.
in height, not in width, but in length. It's still snakes. My enclosure is a bit over half their length. I still want enclosures that are as at least as long as a snake is.
Yeah.
At least that's the minimum for me. That's what all my snakes as a minimum get is their length. And I always try to add at least half of their length to it. So if they're, let's say, a meter, I'll try to give them a meter and a half. So they're not like just barely able to stretch. So yeah, if I had a berm, the only room in my house I had that's big enough is my living room. That's 10 meters. But yeah, wouldn't convert my whole living room. That not that insane.
No, yeah, you got
That's
to have some limits there, but I totally know what you mean. I had a question that dawned on me that I wanted to jump back for the aquarium or the water side. Do you heat it?
no, mostly because the whole room itself
Okay,
is
so it's
heated
just
to a
room
certain
temperature.
temp. It tends to keep the water at usually around 23, 24. It's a tiny bit lower than the room itself, but
Gotcha.
because the whole room is consistently kept to a certain temp, the water tends to stay at the around the same temp.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there anything that well, first off, is there anything with the enclosure that hasn't worked well that you've had to adjust, or like if somebody wanted to do something similar to this, is there things that jump out right away, like okay, this was a fail, don't do that?
Well, definitely trying the aquarium with the glass. That was an
Yes, yeah,
obvious one. But besides that, so again, underestimating falsies and what they managed to pull off. So as I mentioned, the ledges are hollow. So quite recently, remember how I also said what is the issue with big enclosures? To me, losing your snake sometimes and not being sure where they are at. So she had been missing basically. Well, I haven't seen her at all for a good 3 weeks, nearly a month. And that's really not her usual thing. Like she'll be hidden a week, maybe two, but that's really been the maximum ever. Never been gone longer than 2 weeks. And so I start being like, okay, where is she at? Then you start thinking like, okay, you put down some food, you make some noise, move everything around a bit so she really gets woken up, or you would think. And she comes for the food, but she doesn't. And the second time she doesn't. And the third time, a week later, she doesn't. And then you really start worrying. And so, of course, being an overthinker and panicking, I'm like, oh shit, maybe she's under the substrate and she got under the netting or something and now
yeah,
can't get out because that would be typical for her to do. Um, or in worst case, something is really wrong with her, and yeah, she's just not reacting. So it got to a point where I actively started taking substrate out of the enclosure to be able to reach the netting to see if it was loose on the sides, to see if she could have gotten under there.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, while I was frantically digging out substrate, she poked her head out of the bottom of one of the ledges. So
So she
she had
tucked
found
herself
a
in there.
way, yeah, she had found a way to basically loosen the attachment of the first pond foil onto the second that covered the ledge. And so she
Okay.
got that loose, got a bit of the cement that was covering the bottom loose, and created a hole big enough for her to actually enter the ledge. And of course, there is a heat lamp above it. So the
So it was a
ledge is
nice
on the
warm.
inside. Nice and warm. It's nice and soft because it's just the pond foil, which is quite smooth. So she had found herself the best, coziest spot ever that wasn't meant to be a spot. So yeah, things that I would have done differently, definitely would have secured the pond foil first with screws and then covered those with glue,
Silicone.
silicone, indeed, to make sure she couldn't get those off. As a first, that definitely. Secondly, choosing plants. The size I put in of some plants, for example, I have a Alocasia macrorhiza, elephant ear.
Hmm.
I had one for quite a while, and it was already a fairly big plant. It was, I would say, 5 foot when I put it in, but the leaves are not too big. Within 6 months, it had grown big enough that it was actually pushing against the top screen.
Right.
So being a bit more conscious about big plants and how fast they might grow. It's still in there, but I did like completely pull it out, move it to a different spot under an angle. So and doing all of that traumatized it enough to drop all its big leaves. So now it's way smaller again. That's one way to handle it, I guess. But
Yeah, yeah.
um, besides that, I would say taking things for future plans into consideration. Like I'm planning on adding a rain system, foreseeing a way, for example, if I could have used a way to just use water from the pond to just drain
Mm.
out of there, that would have been quite nice because that one gets refreshed quite often and it's great water for the plants
Yeah.
because it's aquarium water. It's great with feeding and
And even
like
if there
nutrition.
is urates in there, it's just going to be nitrogen dump onto the soil. It's just some fertilizer, not a big deal.
Exactly. So um thinking ahead with those things, like now I would need to make a separate basin that holds water to then pump water out of and then pump that into the system to water everything.
Yeah.
Whereas if you take that into account from the get-go, you can foresee something that you install a drain, just a tube that goes to the pump from the get-go. So it just keeps taking it out. And well, gravity will do its work there because well, the tub is big enough with enough water for the way to just push it down.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. Because now,
Uh,
are you going to do a rain system? I know you had bought a pump.
yeah, I have the pump. I have all the connections but one, so it was quite hard to get from the connection. So it's a pump to pump up rainwater from a well. So it's quite a
Okay.
heavy duty pump. Meant to just connect a regular hose to it. I have to bring that down to a very thin tube to put enough pressure on the nozzles to like create
Get
a
them to
rain.
spray. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm waiting on one connection to reduce from half an inch to quarter inch.
Gotcha.
Very annoying piece to find. It's been ordered like 2 weeks ago and it takes ages to arrive. I was
Mm.
hoping it was here sooner, but besides that, we have everything ready except the basin. Because, as mentioned, I'm still thinking of maybe being able to pull the water from the pond. Just as I said, as I didn't foresee that from the get-go, that does make certain things a bit harder.
Right.
To add it now afterwards, like you'll have a tube that you can see, or I need to work with a clear tube. But then there is fish in there, there is shrimp in there, so you have to be careful about the intake that you don't just suck up your
Fish.
animals.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Uh, so yeah, it's a bit of things to take into consideration. The background here, we don't really have companies that make pre-made backgrounds. Like
Right.
I know in the USA, you actually like I watched Snake Discovery. They have a lot of videos on when they were building their zoo,
Hmm.
and they got like pre-made back panels
Yeah,
with like
Universal
prints.
Rock. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish we had it, but yeah, here you either make it yourself, which on that size I'll admit I've done it in the past on a previous one, like completely with like spray foam. You carve it, put
Yeah.
silicone. It's so much work. It's so messy. Over time, it really doesn't look as great because if they move and they climb a lot against it, they will peel off all the dirt and you'll start to see the silicone through it again.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if you pressed it in, it will peel out. So yeah, here I used cocoa fiber, just big mats of cocoa fiber, attached it against it. Over time, plants will grow on it, but right now she figured out that she can actually climb through it. So she keeps trying to climb through it, but then she pulls out pieces, so she creates holes everywhere that I regularly need to patch.
Okay.
So if you can use something sturdier, would definitely recommend people using something sturdier, as they're lovely animals, but they are also great at breaking stuff that you really didn't intend them to break. Um, or getting places. Like I had to attach the tubes of the pump in the water with strips. So I have these suction cups against the glass and they just click around the tube, but she kept always going in between the tube and the glass and clicking them out. But then it would just be spraying everywhere instead of right and creating a proper current.
Right. Yeah.
So I just ended up like attaching them with strips. And even now she sometimes manages to just pull off the suction cups completely.
That's just
But
their nature.
yeah, exactly. The wood in the aquarium, originally it was positioned in such a way that like all the plants were like getting nice light and visible. And then she swims once and knocks them all around. Even though the pieces are massive and heavy, it's nothing to her. She just, especially in the water, she just knocks it and they just go like, wee.
Yeah. So the
So
things you learn.
yeah, yeah.
What about the
Yeah,
screen? What did you guys use for? I didn't. I don't think we talked about that. To cut like the top.
oh yeah, that's actually just regular window screen you
Okay.
would use for insects. Same with the frame I used to make it. So I just got them on like the biggest size I could get with which was 2 meters. So I had to make two of them to fit
And
the
just connect
screen.
them to. Yeah. Yeah.
In the center, I got like a bar, like an eye shape, like the
Okay.
bars that are like eye shape. So it slides in from both sides.
Yes. Yeah.
So that one is attached on the top of the enclosure in the center, so they can slide in. And then all the way around, I put like these L irons.
Okay.
So they're just like attached to the side of the enclosure. And then I'd say they stick out just enough for that profile to slide under it. And they're
Gotcha.
put like every 10 centimeters, which is every 4 inches,
Yeah.
just to make sure that she, when she's on a ledge, can't just push it up and get in between.
Yeah. So they're wedged in there.
Yeah, and then at the front, over the whole length of those profiles, I've put magnets. So those just attached by magnet because she has nothing to reach the front. So even if they're not attached astromically, she has no way of reaching that and pushing it up.
Yeah. Okay. That
But
makes
all
sense.
the way around, they're just secured, and if necessary, you can just slide them out
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
with a bit of effort. It's not
Yeah.
that easy to slide them out, but it's doable.
And I guess it's not something you probably have to do very often.
No, honestly, it would only be if, like, let's say one of the lamps of the room itself broke, which is above the enclosure, and that needs to be replaced, then you would need to slide it out, get into the enclosure to reach a lamp.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like, generally, working on anything, let's say if there is anything with the lamps in the enclosure, you need to fix anything in there, it's just like you climb in there. There is no leaning over, it's just too big, you don't reach the
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I know you had mentioned too, like you have a time lapse on your YouTube channel, which we'll include in the show notes so people can watch the whole thing build. And if you're watching on YouTube, maybe we'll have probably included some of that footage throughout this conversation. And I think you were mentioning before we started recording that there is a tally at the end as far as how much you spent. Do you mind kind of
Yeah,
just breaking down? Just you don't have to go through every individual thing, but just roughly how much did this endeavor cost?
the total cost, because on the YouTube video I'd mentioned to you before, but the repairs of the pond are not included. So the
Right.
plexiglass, which was a massive cost. So on the file on YouTube at the end, it will say just over 6,000 euros. With the plexiglass part included, it would be around 8,000, just under 8,300 euros. With now the pump, if I finish the whole watering system, let's say that that's another 250 to it,
Yeah.
which would, yeah, end up being 8,550, give or take, euros. On the
That's not
file, I did.
bad.
No, it's really not. On the file, I actually wrote down everything. So when I say everything, I counted every box of screws I bought, every tube of silicon, and silicon people will underestimate, but that ended up being, I think, 500 or 600 euros
Oh,
easily.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah,
I could totally see that.
people underestimate how much it costs, but
And how little a tube actually has. You go through them so fast.
especially if you work on this size, like if you do one small enclosure, you'll be like, okay, one tube goes a decent way, but then you do this and you start putting it on a panel and you just don't get far. You're like, okay, you need like 10 tubes to do one part. So it
Yeah.
really builds up quite fast. I also did contact, maybe important for people if they want to do this. I contacted different companies throughout the project. For example, when using the pond foil, if it's safe to use with any type of animal.
Mm.
With the silicon, I contacted the company that makes it here to go over them with them, like which one is 100% safe when it goes for animals.
Yeah.
Um, Literally everything, the concrete, like any products mixed in there, like for the painting of the concrete afterwards, because yeah, painted it to like get texture differences or the look of it. Um, Everything has to be checked. I painted the front of the ledge that keeps the wood in black. That's all done with, for example, child-safe paint.
Yes. Yeah. That's good.
So it's all small things that are necessary. Like very recently, someone commented on my YouTube video, like, you created a very toxic environment with all the glue and the rubber. It's like, it is things that have been taken into considerations, of course. I know you can't just smack any type of products in there.
Yeah.
Um, Same with the pond. The first time around, I used a very specific product to seal it to make sure it didn't leak. That product is, I think I had contacted about 15 different companies before I found one that made a product that I felt safe to use and
Yeah.
that they felt safe to use, that they themselves were like, I dare to guarantee you that this is safe to use with animals.
Yeah, because most companies, even if they know it's probably safe, they're not willing to say that in writing because the product's not made for
Yeah,
animals. So there's no need for them to risk saying it's going to work because why
yeah,
would they? They might as well just say no and simplify
exactly.
their legal side.
And I think this product had been used in aquarium bits of zoos before.
Mm.
So it was used for fish, and fish tend to be quite sensitive to chemicals in
Right.
water. So if they felt safe saying like, yeah, for fish it's fine. In my case, it was also going to be used in an aquarium. They're like, yeah, if it's not going to damage your fish, it's not going to damage the snake either because it's not releasing anything. If it released anything in the water, the fish wouldn't handle it either.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a very important thing if you go building, especially on this size. A lot of the materials you will be needing to use are not made for reptile use or for animal use in general. So contacting companies near you and making sure that whatever you use is safe is your responsibility.
Yes.
Or
Yeah, that's a
the
fantastic
responsibility of,
point.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. A really good point. And like you said, when you're going to that scale, nothing is going to be made for keeping a snake. So you're essentially doing construction at that point.
yeah,
It's an incredible project. I think it's no wonder that every time you post about it, people kind of jaws on the floor because of how incredible it looks. And I think most people, especially listening to this, will be very familiar with fall season, false water cobras, just in general, about how active they are and how much of a personality they have, and they do require a lot. And obviously, making an enclosure like this is not for everybody. Not everybody can afford to do something like that. But it's amazing to see when someone actually just takes the plunge and goes ahead and does it.
it was a really fun project. And like I said, I really also love plants. So a lot of people be like, yeah, but you will never see your snake in there. I'm like, yeah, I really don't care that much. Like, sure,
Yeah.
she's gonna panic me a bit if she goes hiding for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, but all in all together, if she's happy in there and she's having a good life and she's healthy, that's what matters to me. If she feels like coming out, it's quite easy to tell if she wouldn't mind coming out because she'll literally be coming up against the glass when I'm in the room.
Right.
I'll open the enclosure and she's free to crawl out if she wants. If she doesn't, she stays in there. And if she comes out, I'll pick her up. And if the weather is nice, we'll go sit in the yard a bit. But yeah, it's not my priority. I have 7 snakes and I don't handle them all that often.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, not my priority. If I get to see them from time to time and they're having a good life and I get to care for them and provide them that good life, that's what matters. And yeah, if people can provide a big enclosure, I definitely recommend it because the behavior you get to see a snake swim like that, for me, it's one of the most fun things to watch. I can sit in front of that aquarium when she's swimming for hours and just
Hmm.
watch. And yeah, I definitely would recommend people to at least give them a nice size enclosure, a nice tub of water, just for them to be able to see them have more natural behavior, which I recommend with any animal, really. If you have an arboreal snake, do provide it some nice height and branches to see it climb, not just a PVC tube. If you have a snake that likes water, give it a nice big tub of water so you can actually see do more than just soak.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, the swimming thing is huge. I mean, there's a lot of snakes that are very good swimmers, and like and it's tough to implement because of how much technical work there is to provide some larger swimming
Definitely.
space. But I think it would be something, even if somebody wanted to do that. I mean, you see people do that in like their tub and whatnot, or even if you wanted to have a large basin that wasn't part of the enclosure that you just filled up once in a while and let your
Yeah,
snake explore, like something like that would work.
like stupidly said, but you have like the kiddie pools just
Exactly.
to put in the yard. In the summer, if it's good weather out, fill it with a bunch of rainwater. I would refrain from tap water because it does, depending on where you live, of course. Like, for example, here it's perfectly safe, but I know in a lot of places in America, they're like quite against using the tap water for
Hmm.
these things. But yeah, use some rainwater and let them have a great time. Like, even like my king snakes, like all of them, I don't like giving them just a water dish. Give them like something decent size, even if it does take up a bit of space of the enclosure. In that moment, you'll just either have to go a tiny bit bigger on the land part or start implementing ledges, but in some height, it increases the floor space tremendously in such an easy way. And yeah, suddenly people that put in ledges will be like, oh yeah, suddenly my snake will be up in the height. Yeah,
Yeah,
because you provide it. If you provide
absolutely.
them the things, like a podcast you did recently where I really loved, where you talked about what is natural for an
Yes.
enclosure. It
Yeah.
was really interesting because indeed, like you will find snakes in a barn very often. Like red snakes are known to go consistently steal chicken eggs in a chicken coop,
Yes.
and they'll
Yeah.
just stay there because they know they find food there. So natural, like if you can provide ledges, does it have to look natural? Of course, it's fun to make stuff like my enclosure look natural, but at the end of the day, you're not going to go into the jungle and find a bunch of rocks sticking out while there is branches in the center of them like that.
Yes.
It's partially just for practicality. I want something sturdy for her to be on height, and I want it to look a bit natural to fall more into the enclosure. But you can perfectly just take a wooden plank, put it in, secure it, and they have a nice ledge. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think just getting materials, whether it's natural or not natural, but just to create more opportunity for the animals to be themselves, do more than just lay in a box and not move and wait for you to feed them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's the function that you're providing, and it
Yeah,
doesn't really matter how you do it, as long as you can give them that opportunity to have choice and exhibit different behaviors.
yeah, it's like I like bioactive enclosures because one, it makes it easy on maintenance, really honestly. Like everyone that has a lot of bioactive will admit that you don't have to sterilize everything, you don't have to scrub everything.
Hmm.
You'll still need to clean, just less intense, less sterile
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is no difference to me whether you keep them in bioactive substrate or you keep them on aspen or on anything else that you then clean every week. It just do provide them not with a tiny layer, but give them a bit of substrate so that they can burrow, give them a bit of branches. If it is arboreal, not just one single PVC tube and they just have to hang on the same spot all day, give
Yes.
them a
Yeah.
bit of height differences. Can still do it with PVC, really, but give them a few, give them choice to move around a bit, make a box to hide up in the height instead of on the floor.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah. I
really
always say
change
that, like,
things up.
how many places in the enclosure can the animal go is a good question you can ask yourself. And if you,
Yeah,
and sometimes we make enclosures that look aesthetically cool with like one branch or like you say, like one PVC thing. It's like that snake can go one place or two, the floor and that stick.
yeah,
So, it's just not enough.
yeah. It's a thing where people be like, oh, they need a warm height, they need a cold height, and they will provide two spots and a bit of like maybe plants or foliage, and we're settled. But there is so much more that you can provide to them to see natural behavior, to see them crawl around. Like people tend to say, like freshwater cobras don't climb well. Well, give them a bunch of branches and height, and you'll see how well they actually can climb.
Yeah.
She's more often up in height than she's up on the floor. She ended up finding a hiding spot up on a ledge, inside the ledge of the
Right.
floor. Goes to show how much they actually like being off the ground. Yet, sure, I've I have the camera with the motion detection. I have a whole lot of videos with her just tumbling off stuff. Then I get a notification and I look and I don't see her, and then I scroll back a bit and I just see her go like, wee.
Yeah.
So sure, they also fall, but that's any snake, really.
Yes.
Even the best climbers, they'll fall off stuff from time to time. But yeah, just in general, I think people that want to try something similar, do they have to go as big as this? Of course not. I went this size just because I could, really. That's the only answer I can give to that one.
Yeah.
Um, Not because I needed to, not because someone told me to, just because I could. I had the space. It was a room I didn't use. I decided I'll make the enclosure till the ceiling, the whole width of the room, which was a 4 meters. And I'll go in depth all the way till I reach the window. And then the pond will be in height till the window. So that makes then the L.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that's basically how the dimensions have been decided. It's not like I said from the get-go, this has to be the size. It was just like
You worked
we
with what you
design the
had.
shape, we measure the room afterwards, and then it's like, okay, so this will be the dimensions.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
So for me, it was more based on the size of the room. If someone has a room that's, let's say, 6 feet, and they're like, I want to do something similar, go ahead. It's not like the whole thing is not based on how big can you go. It's how much can you provide for the animal you have. Is more what
Yes.
I think in this type of mindset.
I think that's really, really well said, and I think that's a perfect place to wrap up as well. I think I just loved
I,
chatting with you. I think this project is, I mean, like I said, it creates a lot of buzz when you share it, and it's been fascinating talking to you. Just the process of getting through this, and I think like you said, it's not about the size; it's about the what you're willing to provide, and people can take the lessons that you have talked about in this episode and shrink it or grow it depending on what they want to do with it. You could just, these can be
exactly.
scaled at any size. So Anke, thank you so much for being here. And also I'll thank you on behalf of all the American listeners who are probably appreciating your dimension conversions. Like, you're very fast at that. So I don't know if that's from your job, but yeah, I know people appreciate that as well. Is there anything you wanted to say as we wrap up that we didn't cover today?
I would first of all say no problem on the conversion. It's mostly from getting asked questions throughout the build of people asking me
Okay.
questions and having to convert them every time. And after a while, you start getting used to what is a foot to centimeters or an inch to centimeters. Once you
Yeah.
know those two, it's not that hard, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Depending on how big the size is, but generally speaking, not that much of a problem. And no, I think in general we covered most of the things. Yeah, I think the water system will still be added. Once that's added, I will most likely put an update on my YouTube channel once that will show the aquarium with the acrylic part in it. I'll show a bit better on video where the connection is between the two, and
Mhm.
then the rain system itself. But yeah, besides that, I would just tell people enjoy keeping your reptiles. Make sure that instead of going for quantity, you go for quality.
Yes.
Um, Always prefer hearing people that keep a bit less animals in nice setups than those that go for a whole lot all shoved in racks as adults just to be able to say they have many.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Completely agree. Can you let everybody know the Instagram and the YouTube page just so they can come find it?
For sure. Apparently, I always thought that on YouTube it was just at Yoshinowa, but apparently you need to add a one at the end. It's at Yoshinowa one, and then you'll actually find my channel, or should find the channel where the enclosure is on.
And I'll put that in the show notes
Um,
for folks as well.
on Instagram, it's Tanuki the Falsy. I will admit I'm not really all that active on social media, but from time to time I drop some posts there. YouTube mostly when there is big changes to the enclosure. So the time lapse was the last one, and then somewhere in the next, hopefully month or so, the rain system will be done, and we'll put an update on there. But I think besides that, most of the whole enclosure has been covered. Not anything specific or of big importance, I'll say it like that, in terms of the building that I can think of.
Awesome.
Uh, Mostly, what I can tell people, when you do a build like this, make sure also to go over every part you do and make sure you sealed everything off, both in waterproofing, but also just in escapability.
Mm.
We all know that snakes are very, very good at finding the weak spots in setups. So, um, yeah, when you build something of this size, it's quite easy to overlook one or two. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great advice from someone who has built an incredible enclosure. So Anke, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for
Thank you for
sharing
having me.
the enclosure and the build and being on the podcast to talk about it. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me. As I said, it's the first time I talked about the enclosure like this, and it was great fun. Really happy when people want to hear more about it, because all I can hope is that it inspires people to provide their animals with bigger setups and not stick to the idea of too small. Smaller is better. Nature is big. Your
Yes.
enclosure can be big too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You definitely have inspired people, so that's fantastic. All right, that is the end of that episode. Anke, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story and talking about how you actually constructed this enclosure. As I said through the intro and as we were kind of saying at the end, even if somebody isn't going to build an enclosure this large, there's so much you can learn from somebody like you who's actually gone ahead and done something like this. So if you're out there and you're wanting to build your own enclosure, whether it's the same size as this one or maybe something that's a quarter of the size or smaller or something in between, I'm sure there's something you pulled from this episode that you can learn to, or that you can utilize in your own project. And it's also nice just, when somebody's working with a species like a false water cobra that are going to challenge every piece of integrity and your ability to clean and all these different things that like a false water cobra will do. We know if it works with that species, it's probably going to carry over to almost any other species quite effortlessly. So it's sort of nice to, use that as a test species. So anyway, Anke, thank you so much for joining me. Listeners, thank you so much for listening to the episode. If you did enjoy it, make sure you share it on social media. If you are listening on the audio version, I guess this is probably something I should have mentioned in the intro. We do have lots of clips and videos of Anke's enclosure in the YouTube version of the episode. So you might want to double back and go there, or just go check out her Instagram or Facebook page. All that is in, or sorry, not Facebook, her YouTube channel. All that is in the show notes. So if you want to check it out there, you can do that. If you want to join us over on Patreon to have early access to episodes and to have immediate access to the Discord server, you can do that at patreon.com/animalsathome. And for really as little as 70 cents to $1 per episode, or maybe it's a little bit more, maybe just $1.30 per episode, you can really help support the podcast. That really goes a long way. Or go check out the show's sponsor, customreptilehabitats.com. If you actually go check out the link in either the YouTube description or the show notes, that is an affiliate link. So if you do make a purchase, a commission comes back to me at no extra cost to you. And of course, that helps support the show. If you're looking for any more information on this episode or any other episode on the network, make sure you head to animalsathomenetwork.com. And that is it for me this week. I will catch you guys in the next episode.